So today we're going to look at section 1.4, which is about linear functions and slope. So we're going to be looking at how to calculate the slope, how to write an equation in point slope form and in slope intercept form. We're going to look at what it is to be, how to write horizontal and vertical lines and graph them. We're going to look at the general form. We're going to look at x and y intercepts, and we're going to look at modeling data with linear functions to make predictions also. So let's take a look at the definition of a slope. So what is a slope? Well, the slope is how fast the line rises or falls. So let's fill in the blank here. The slope of the line through the distinct points x1, y1, and x2, y2. So all these little subscripts of 1 and 2 mean is that this is the first point and second point. And the slope is known as the change in the y coordinates divided by the change in the x coordinates. You also may have heard this slope called the rise over the run. The slope formula that you'll find on your formula sheet looks like this: y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, where the denominator, the difference in the x's, does not equal 0. So this is the formula for slope you will find on the formula sheet, and the slope is sometimes abbreviated m. So let's take a look at an example. So it says find the slope of the line passing through these 2 points, 4, -2, and -1, 5. So I'm going to write the formula from my formula sheet. I'm going to label the 2 points. So I want to make sure that I label them like this. Now, does it matter which one I call the first point and which one I call the second point? It does not. You could call this x2, y2 and this x1, y1. It doesn't matter. You just can't interchange you can't have 2 different subscripts within the same ordered pair. So what I mean by that is you couldn't say this is x1, y2. So this is in my, how I labeled it, this is my first point and this is my second point. So let me just put these in with the corresponding colors. So y2, y1, x2, and x1. So whenever I go to do this, what I like to do so that I don't mix up the plus and minus signs, I'll put blank spots in place of the variables. Because I know that there has to be a minus sign. The formula tells me a minus sign. It's the difference between the y points. It's the difference between the x points. And then I will plug in. So y2 I labeled as 5. So in place of y2, I'll put 5. y1 I labeled as -2. So in place of y1, I'll put -2. x2, well, that was -1. And x1, that was 4. So now you have to do the calculations. And so 5 minus -2, well, that's the same as 5 plus 2. When you subtract a negative number, it's the same as adding that second number. So in the numerator, I'll get 7. In the denominator, I have -1 minus 4. -1 minus 4 is a -5. So it's -1 minus 4, or -5. So I get a slope of 7 over negative 5. Now you may say to me, is this okay to write as 7 over negative 5? Well, technically, you would want to write it like this, the opposite of 7 over 5. But it is the same as if you look at the ratio of negative 5 over negative 7 over 5, that is the same as this. And so, likewise, so is this. So all three of these mean the same thing. They're going to work out to be a negative number. This is in fraction form. In a decimal, I would take the negative 7 and divide by 5 on the calculator. I would get negative 1.4. Typically, the MyLab Math is going to ask you to write it in fraction form, so that's where we'll leave it. So if this is the slope. Now, if I was to plot these points, I just want to take a look at what this line would look like. So all I need to plot a line is 2 points, and I have that. So I'm just drawing my XY plane, and then let's plot our 2 points. Negative 1, 5 would be somewhere here, and 4, negative 2 somewhere here. And then I'll draw, well, straight of a line as I can on this, and this is the line that connects these 2 points. This has a negative slope, meaning from left to right, it's going to go downward. So, and I did end up with a negative number here. I ended up with negative 7 over 5. So I should expect my graph to go downward from left to right. So this is one possibility. It is also possible to have a positive slope. So, and let me write that, negative slope. And if I was to have a positive slope, then it would look like this. A positive slope, the line would increase. So if you end up with a positive number when you do the calculation, then you should have some type of line that goes upward from left to right. A third possibility, if it's not negative and it's not positive, what's left? Well, you could have a slope that is equal to 0. So it's possible that the line looks like this. This is called a horizontal line. Let me make my x-axis a little straighter. So a horizontal line has a slope equal to 0. So there's no change in the y values. And the last possibility is that there's no change in the x values. And that doesn't give you a function, but it does give you a line, and it's a special line that it gives you. This is a vertical line. So if you end up with a number divided by 0, a number divided by 0 is undefined. And if that happens, then you end up with a vertical line. So let me try to write that in here a little better, a little clearer. So a number divided by 0, you're not going to write equals, because anything divided by 0 does not equal anything. You say it's undefined. So it has an undefined slope, and that makes it a vertical line. Different than that horizontal line, because when you calculate the slope here, you end up with 0 divided by a number. And you can take 0 and divide by any number. This one equals 0. So you have to be careful. Don't just write 0 if this happens. So this one has, the 0 slope has no vertical, no vertical change. No change in the y's. But this one has no change in the x's. Horizontal or vertical line has no change in the x's. All right, so how do we write the equation of these lines? One way is to use what's called the point slope form. Here is the point slope form. And in order to write the equation in point slope form, you need to know the slope and you plug it in here. You need to know a point on that line. So you know x1, you know 1 point, you plug it in there, the x value, and you know 1 y value, and you plug it in here. That's all you need to do is plug in those 3 values. And then it's a matter of simplifying. So we look at the next page, and you're going to see an example. So the first thing it says is write an equation in point slope form. So point slope form looks like this. So the slope, it tells us it has a slope of 6. So that's going to go in place of the m. And then it tells us it passes through the point 2, -5. So x1 is 2, and -5 is y1. So that's where I'm going to put these. So I'm going to say y minus, and again, what you could do is put in these little blank spots. And that's to help us when we are writing this so we don't mix up any negative values. So x1 is 2, y1 is -5, and the slope is 6. And now it's just a matter of simplifying. So y minus -5, well, that's going to be y plus 5. And then I have 6 times x minus 2. And I would distribute that 6 to get 6x minus 12. A lot of times it will say put it in point slope form. So if it says point slope form, then you could leave it here. This is point slope form. We just kind of simplified the so that it looked nicer. So moving this minus negative to plus. But if it asks you to solve for y, then you have to take it a step further, which is what I started to do. What I did was I took the 6 and I distributed it to each of these terms, and I ended up with this. And now in order to solve for y, I have to subtract 5 from both sides. And then I have solved for y. Y is now by itself. And so I'll say y is equal to 6x minus 17. This is solved for y. This is what we call the slope-intercept form of the equation of a line. This has a slope of 6 and passes through the point 2, -5. Now we'll look at the slope-intercept form of the equation of a line. The slope-intercept form is an equation that is solved for y. And it looks like this. And in this equation, there are 2 things that we're going to fill in. We're going to fill in the b. This is the y-intercept. That's where it crosses the y-axis. And then we're also going to fill in the m. This is the slope. This is the coefficient on the x. So we're going to explore this more in the next video.